ultimately on your devotees. Acts like creation are only incidental for you. Thus you engage others in creation, etc. Right? So the Lord, all these other incidental aspects of the universe, though ultimately it's coming from his potency, he engages others. So the demigods and all them. So Brahma does creation, the demigods do all the maintenance and management and all that. So because for the Lord, the interaction with the devotees is the only thing important to you. The other things that it says incidental is just something that happens on the side. Does that make sense? You know, it's like you, how you say, order lunch and you get a napkin along with lunch. It's incidental. You know, does that make sense? So that's the whole thing. It's not the main aspect. It's not what's of interest to Krishna. So Krishna can make all this happen with just like you said, a spark of his splendor. So he uses the rest of it for interacting with devotees, because that's all that's interesting to him. He's not interested in how the running of the creation. We're very much enamored by it because of its having its Krishna's qualities. That's why. But we're enamored by just a spark. You know, when he says a spark, he means the whole thing, the whole Mahatattva. Not just, what we're doing is a spark and the universe is bigger and then the Mahatattva is a big. No, it's just the whole thing is just a spark. Yes.
The question makes why he's doing that.
He's doing it because of the interaction with devotees.
And the creation.
Because otherwise, unless you fully subscribe to the Hindu concept of Radha and Krishna in the cloud with an Om sign, and that's good enough, then you have to have a place. And so then all the pastimes go on here.
Okay, that would be the reason.
Yeah, because it's with he comes to interact with the devotees. As a side thing, since he's here, he gets rid of the demons and establish religious principles. But that's only because then it makes it favorable for the interaction with devotees. Because that's all that's interesting. We have to take it that the aspect of being God is just something that it's him. So there's no extra endeavor for it. So for many living entities, then that aspect is important to them. He's God and we're his servants and this and that. But we see is that takes up less than half of the spiritual world. Then you have Goloka, and then in there, then you have those that it's mixed or it's just sweetness. But just Aishwaryas, you don't find that in Goloka. Does that make sense? The Kauravas continued. O unlimited one of 1,000 heads, as your pastime you carry this earthly globe upon one of your heads. At the time of annihilation, you withdraw the entire universe within your body, and remaining all alone, lie down to rest. Srila Sanatana Goswami comments. Protection is your main business because you hold up the earth by your great mercy in your specialized expansion. Right? So also protection is one of the 10 topics of Bhagavatam. O unlimited one, therefore you can have 1,000 heads. Therefore, with even one of your heads, you can support the whole world. Holding up the earth as Sesha, I am different from the Supreme Lord. Why do you praise me as being identical? At the end, you alone remain. That means he expanded so many things, but once it winds up, then there's just him alone. Or, even during destruction, you do not deviate from maintaining everything. At that time, you protect Niruddha, the universe within your form, Atmani. You are without a second. You alone remain and are thus called Sesha, or unlimited one, Ananta. O Lord with unlimited heads, this form is revealed in the Purusha Shukta. Therefore, you maintain this universe by your unlimited form as a pastime. Right? So the Purusha Shukta is defining this aspect of Hiranyagarbha, how he has this unlimited forms and expanded and has made everything. Same time, he's the support of everything. So this aspect is Sesha he's the last of the expansions, but at the same time he's also known as Ananta because he's unlimited, even though he may be the last expansion. Right? Because he's holding up unlimited universes. And so therefore he has unlimited hoods, so he's Ananta. Does that make sense? And then he's in each universe and like this. And with the Kauravas continue. Your anger is meant for instructing everyone. It is not a manifestation of hatred or envy. Right? So here the anger is just because something's wrong and needs to be corrected. So the anger will be used to correct it, and once it's corrected, then it goes back to normal. Right? Yes.
We see here that Balaram's reaction is, we would say, very, very strong. To what he follows the etiquette when the whole thing unfolds. He controls his senses, hears what they say, but then his reaction is
yes, but
a serious thing.
But the thing is they are insulting the Supreme Lord and his pastimes. So then, that's not taken very lightly.
Because even some people argue that Balaram, as he is, not as Krishna, he overreacts sometimes. The same story with the Roma Harsha. It's like,
That's one could look at it that way if we are taking in fractions these particular ones lightly. Because if we don't accept the principle of authority, or we have problems with authority, then that means the idea of having an absolute standard and therefore something to judge it by will not be there, or will not be something that's palatable. So we just want to work on the principle that it is, done in a certain way.
yeah.
But at the same time, as you see, is those who would consider this overreacting, because they would consider, well, everyone has their opinion, everyone's different, everyone's this and that, meaning everyone can flaunt authority in whatever unique way they want. And as long as they don't bother me and my flaunting it, we're fine. But now, if there is some value particularly that they have, and somebody breaks that, then you'll see is that, overreacting is just their standard way of responding. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing, is that they're only saying tolerate in areas that they, so if you're intolerant of what they're tolerant of, you're intolerant. But what they're intolerant of, they're really intolerant. So it's not that what is the measurement that they're using? So that's the problem. And since the measurement's not Krishna, therefore that measurement's not Yogamaya. It'll be Mahamaya. Because Maya means measurement. I think it comes from miyate or something like that. So that you can measure. And so then what is their standard? It's just like the Greek society is the basis of, you can say, Western philosophy and thought and broad-minded. Now, the Greeks, was it a problem if you were gay? No. And if you were, let's say, basically a hijra, you were worshipped. Like that. So they had, it was known in the Roman society that if things got too out of hand, you just went to Greece and you were fine. So that's just how it worked. And so, they had a lot of things, a lot of different stuff that's there that you could say is very contemporary, very modern. But at the same time, what was their reaction to Socrates, who was saying there's an absolute truth? He's just a philosopher. They put him to death. And not only wouldn't do it themselves, they give him the hemlock that he has to drink. So they can say, well, we didn't kill him, he drank it. You understand? So this principle, because it's the modes of nature, that's what's going on. So whoever will say that Balaram is overreacting, then they're like the sophists of that time. They'll say Balaram's overreacting, but check them out when something goes wrong that they don't agree with. So it's not that they're broad-minded on all levels and very kind and this and that everywhere. They're only kind where they feel kindness is due, and where it's not, they're seriously unkind. So it's authority issues. That's all.
Because Balaram is the original spiritual master, so it makes sense that he's in a position to instruct.
Yes, but the problem is bringing that point up, which is a good point, it's a valid point, but bringing it up in the context of what he was saying, they'll consider that too much also. Thunderbolt and Rose, Guru should only be Rose, not Thunderbolt. But when something socially that they don't like, they're like, Thunderbolt's, a euphemism. So that's the whole difficulty, is that we have basically two choices: to create, to understand and follow standards coming from the Lord, or create our own. Bhaktividya Thakur mentions the conditioned soul must follow religion. So either you follow what Shastra gives, or you'll make it up. It's just the way it is. So that's the whole thing. So in these things is that there's the pastime is there, and they're reacting very badly in how they're dealing with the Supreme Lord. And they're being very aggressive. It's not that they in one sense don't kind of know who he is or this or that. Like you see, I think there's a chapter, we haven't come up to it yet, I think, or did we? It's called Ill-Motivated Dhritarashtra. We haven't come up to it yet, so it's just before Kurukshetra or something. So it's a very short chapter. It's one of the shortest chapters. And this whole chapter is about him explaining actually the position and glories of Krishna, how he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how everything's going to go the way he wants it. Then Dharma is sent by him, the law is by him, you follow it, everything will go nice. You don't follow it, nothing will go right. Everything like that. You can go, this guy is really Krishna conscious, at least he knows the philosophy. But he says at the end, though he knows it's wrong because of his attachment to the sun, what can he do?
We did this a long time back.
We did a long time. So that's the whole difficulty, is that this knowledge, but how they're dealing is so badly. Two, we have to understand we are working in Kshatriya culture. And so unless the person themselves is of Kshatriya nature, and then they're saying it's too much, then we can, well then how? But if they are from a different nature, then we'll see it's like, does that make sense? It's just like, how you say is, how you say? It's just the way the reaction goes. It's Kshatriyas, they have that passion, have the thing. So for them, we see is that it's going quite nicely. Because if he hadn't done this, they would have carried on in their arrogance. But by doing this, then immediately they understand and everything goes nicely. But the point is can the individuals who complain about Balaram's overuse of anger or force, can they maintain things the way Balaram does? He pulled the city, but the city's still there. Could we do that? No, when we show our anger, we actually destroy, because that's what it said here. He says, who just said, what type? No, it just means that he showed the anger, but it was, here. Your anger is meant for instructing everyone. It is not a manifestation of hatred or envy. So those who say this about Balaram, they can't do that. They'll act out of hatred or envy. Because if they didn't have hatred or envy, why would they say this towards Balaram? Because they're taking it as a light thing, insulting Krishna and dealing badly like this, and the arrogance that they have and all. So then one would have a doubt on whether these individuals, they themselves don't also think Krishna's behaving wrong and stuff like that. Why, I'm a devotee, why is this happening to me? This shouldn't happen to me. I should have more control, more authority. I should have more respect. Why aren't I getting it? Does that make? Are we getting anywhere there?
Yeah, I'm just thinking on that point. You also mentioned it yesterday.
Now, what I'm saying, these are underlying qualities that you may be able to observe that they're there, but they're not the shown qualities. You understand? What I'm talking about here is the mentality underneath, the underlying, the foundational mentality. I'm not talking about the presentation that they present themselves. There it'll be very nice, pleasant, talk very nicely, try not to get upset about anything, as long as it's within the realm that they are comfortable with. If it goes outside of that, then you'll see as they have a meltdown as bad or worse than others. But they will be known, or at least they will identify and project themselves that they're the broad-minded, liberal, all-accommodating people. But actually they're not. You know what I'm saying? Because they create a standard that everybody has to follow, so they don't actually like independence. This is the fun part, is that where there's control and where there's independence between those who are conservative and liberal, they're just opposite. It's not that they both don't have it. You know what I'm saying? It means the conservatives, they have a standard social etiquette, means of standard of secondary form that they all follow. But at the same time, each one can do their own thing within that, and they don't bother each other. Right? While the liberals, it'll be the opposite, is that within the forms that you use, that you can have, it means you can have so many forms, how you dress, how you look, this and that. But the standard of control of what standards you have to have of qualities and all that they're very strict about. In fact, it takes a much greater show of force to apply the liberal standard than it does the conservative. You know what I'm saying? Like that. Yeah, because it's just like you generally don't, let's say you have a state that's known for being a little strong, let's say like a German state. But you generally don't see books written about that as a thing. Generally, when they want to show that authority is over the top and totally controlling everybody, they're using a leftist state as the example. Just going back historically, that's just how it goes. Because right will go to the point, then it may turn into a despot or something like that, and that's just obviously not. No one will say that's great. But the left will keep going until it turns into the same thing, but because of the way they talk, they try to present it as if they're working for the higher good. Does that make sense? So that's the funny part. So that's why if we maintain attachment to the modern ideals without understanding the principles that we're working with and what those ideals are actually meant for, we're not thoughtful, then it'll never run right. It'll never be good for them, never be good for anybody else. And then finally, like this, you can't taste the pastime because they're always, this and that. It's just like, how you say, trying to have in a contemporary environment, have a lunch with somebody. Nothing that anybody eats is right. It's just wrong. Everything's wrong. What you order, how you eat it, how much you eat of it, how much it costs. There's nothing you can do right. So in the same way as then you can't, there is no relationship, there's no rasa. So instead of appreciate how Balaram is doing this to correct them, and you see they surrender, they take up the devotional attitude. Now, when they do this, is that what happens? You'd have to see. But there's a good chance no, because of the envy and hatred. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Therefore it is social justice warrior, not social justice cute, cuddly, harmless teddy bear.
Yes, social justice warrior.
Or warrior.
Not social justice, really nice, gregarious guy. Excuse me, person. Even though guy you can use for men or women, but we'll just be safe, say person. just in case they identify as an animal or something. Yes.
In that pastime, actually, everybody is benefiting.
Everybody?
Benefit.
Everybody benefits, yes.
And the reader.
Yeah, everybody benefits. That's the whole thing. Balaram, he was, pleased by how it went. They got all the benefit. The devotees who were watching, those who were acting in an improper way, then they became corrected. Then those who speak about it, those who hear about it, everybody becomes benefited because it's Krishna's. It's the Supreme Lord in the form of Balaram. So then everyone gets the benefit. But if we simply find fault, which we will probably feel is that I'm doing this from a higher intellectual, cultured, sophisticated platform, but people who can find fault in God are, I would say a dime a dozen is probably quite expensive. You could probably, do it in how you call it? Micro cents or something like that. I don't know what it is, but, they're so common. And that's the sad part is they feel that they're so special and unique when they're just like everybody else. Like that. In fact, when it comes to finding fault, probably the rickshaw wallahs could come up with better stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like in the West, the guys at the pub, they think they're so like that and gross, and they start to get loud and use vulgar language. But how many words do they use? Like that. Like I said one day, one boy was telling me he saw this fight between two village Bengali ladies. He said they went on for an hour. It probably wasn't an hour, but but he said every time they spoke something new that he never heard of before. every how you say, vulgar language was fresh and different and unique that he said he's never heard of. And he said that if a rickshaw walla was there, they would have to cover their ears. So it was, so they're not even that good at that, so that's the problem. It's like Prabhupada, one devotee was telling Prabhupada, oh, Prabhupada, I'm the most fallen. Prabhupada looked at him and says, no, you're not the most fallen. You're not the most anything. Right? Krishna's the most of everything, and we're just insignificant servants. So as soon as we think I'm the most, then we think I'm the best. I'm the best of the fallen. Like Hiranyakashipu, oh, best of the demons. Yeah, so you have to be careful. These are subtle points. And if we want to look at them from the social justice platform, then we can do that and go on arguing forever and never actually advance in devotional service, never get a taste, never get steady, always be distracted by secondary things, think that a pursuance of good qualities alone is devotional service, and feel ourselves advanced and others not because they're not, and we'll develop our own religion and own sophistication. And then we'll claim that this is devotional service when if you look with the acharyas generally make the point is an unbiased view. You just look at it and okay, what's the argument here, what's there, and then you'll see is that it's not very good. So that's why we have to be very careful about these things. So we find is that the more we accept the principle of authority and we're comfortable with that, then the more these pastimes are inspiring. And the less we have, and the more we have issues with authority, then because it's all about Krishna, who is the supreme authority, we're going to have problems with everything. So that's the difficulty. So as much as possible, so that people do get a taste and an interest, then you try to sidestep these things by some simple answer that they're comfortable. Just say, yeah, he just did it just to instruct. It was just like that. And they were big Kshatriyas, emperors of the world, thought that they were very big, so unless something catastrophic happens, they wouldn't even notice. They can go out on the battlefield. One of these guys can fight with, 10,000 warriors, and it's comfortable for it. So unless it's very, very big, they won't notice. So then like that, okay, and then you go on. Does that make sense? You just have to find that kind of way to sidestep this, because there's not enough purity at heart to be able to actually appreciate and understand what's there. So what elements they will take, then get them into that. It's just like the people don't like the philosophy or the culture or this or that. Just give them prasad, like that. Be pleasant, like this. Or if they like the kirtan, then that's good. If you can give some philosophy, nice. If you can't, then don't. So, until they get purified, and then you start to give more. So, yes.
Probably with this argument that it's overreacting, they cannot stand that Krishna or Balaram, they are establishing their position as the supreme Lord.
Yeah, because they're the supreme authority. Because the point is generally those who criticize the Lord from this way, they want to be the authority. It means how they view the world, how they view Krishna consciousness, that's the standard, and anything else is above that's fanatic, anything below that is not up to standard. So that's the whole thing. It's just people fall back. It means you either move forward into the Vedic culture that we're offered, or you'll fall back into whatever you grew up in. Does that make sense? So that's the whole thing. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, the display of anger from you, who maintain Sattva Gun for maintenance, was only to teach us. What type of anger? That which has its purpose, tat paraha, to maintain respect for rules of conduct. So that's the point, is he establishes the rules. But what you were saying is they want to establish the rules. Because you exhibited anger, we are now obedient. Right? So because of that, otherwise they wouldn't have been. Previously, we were polluted and did not see you, being blinded by pride. Tat para, without the visarga, would make the phrase evocative. O Lord, whose object is maintenance of correct behavior. Right? So that's what he's doing. If Krishna comes to establish dharma, then that's the whole point. He has to establish what's the correct behavior. So he removes what's incorrect and establishes what is correct. So by one pastime, he does both. Like that, and within a few seconds. Not bad. Take a whole city and turn it around. I mean, it's like, what do you call it? Sodom and Gomorrah, they had to just turn it into salt or something like that, or just burn it down. It was like that. Jericho also, just knock it down. It was just too far gone. While here, he just takes it to throw into the river, and then everybody surrenders. So it works. No? The Kauravas is concluded. We bow down to you, O soul of all beings, O wielder of all potencies, O tireless maker of the universe, right? Because every breath he's making a new universe, new creation. Yes. Offering you obeisances, we take shelter of you. Srila Jiva Goswami comments, seeing that he did not stop pulling the city, they became terrified. They began chanting his dear names and bowing down in surrender. We offer obeisances because you are the soul of all beings. It's not that he just gave a yank on it to just show he could do it. He just kept pulling it until, okay, then they come out. We offer respects because you are the soul of all beings, Paramatma. Thus you have all powers because you alone arrange for the senses to function, Sarva Shakti Dhara. And you are endowed with all powers, Avyaya. Therefore you create the universe, Vishva Karaman. Let us offer obeisance. Let that remain eternally, Astu. Because of the qualities listed, you are worthy of being our shelter. You are the supremely powerful because you possess all Shaktis. You are inexhaustible in those powers, therefore you create the universe. Yes.
Can we say that the first option Bali gave them, it was actually a personal option?
Yeah.
And then they couldn't relate to that.
Yes.
And then he showed them vibhutis. So now all those prayers, it sounds like, they don't see him as much as a person, but more like a Paramatma.
Yes. Yes.
So that impresses them. So
yes.
That connects with that particular group.
Yes, yes. Otherwise, then they don't notice, because he is there, he's a yadu, they're junior to us, we're superior, we're the greatest. and like that. So yes, so short of this, where he shows his opulence, then only they appreciate it. So that's also would be a very nice way to explain it to the person. Because they wanted war. Then Balaram said, no, I'll take care of it. It's family to family, so let us conciliation. So right there, those who have a doubt that he reacts too strongly, then should be pacified.
Yeah.
Because then he goes there and presents this pleasant thing. You know, it's in strong language because they are wrong. Because they took 6 Maharajas to catch one. That's irreligious. That's against the law. Right? So all that is being neglected. And so basically they're taking the mood of the residents of you know, how you say, the Kuru jungle. It means the Kuru's place. But at the same time is the Kurus surrender and they don't. So a little less fortunate. So then he only reacts because they would have had war. If they wanted war, then he would have had to not do anything. But he took all the trouble, and they didn't respect that, like you said, as a person and this and that. It's only when he shows he's God, then okay, now they'll respect. So that's the difficulty. So that's how it has to be done. Depending upon who you're dealing with, then that's what's there. You know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the point. Is if you have Brahmins, then you just simply point out the Shastric things and this and that, and then they're good. But then you see when you start with Kshatriyas on down, because the passion that's there and the ignorance that comes up, then unless it's much stronger, they don't respond. You know, it's like I remember as a kid, a parking ticket or you know these minor infractions. They were very minor amount of money. You know, because people value it and all this and that, so then they would be very careful about this. Now it's like I think it's like a parking ticket's like 90 euros or 90 bucks. Or, you know, it's really ridiculous. And some other things are like 100 and something and 200. Really, really high. That's because they've tried the lower things and people they don't care. So they had to make it to the point where they find they get some response. So in other words, if it's $5 or $10, nobody cares. But you make it 120 and now they care. So then they probably just keep increasing until they see it starts to go down. And then as long as it stays down, good. If not, then they raise it again. You know, so that's the difficulty, is that it's the quality of the people that you're dealing with also. So Srila Sukadeva Goswami continued, thus propitiated by the Kurus, whose city was trembling and who were surrendering to him in great distress, Lord Balaram became very calm and kindly disposed towards them. Do not be afraid, he said, and took away their fear. That when you surrender, then he takes care very nicely. But that's the whole point, is that we won't be very angry, but we also won't give much support or freedom from fear. So it's like, so what's the speciality? So they're saying, oh, it's so strong one way, but the other way, it's also very strong. So the whole thing is just to a particular level. Well, nowadays it's like people, oh, you pour this and that, and then the next moment they don't care anything about you. They moved on to another poor fellow. Poor person. Yes.
Actually, one very important characteristic of Kshatriya that he gives joy to the citizens.
Yes, they give joy to the citizens. So that's why Balaram is compared to the moon. And so that's one of the qualities of a Kshatriya. Just by seeing them, then they're pleasing. You know, that's what it should be, is you see the leader and you're pleased. Just the mood and, you know, how, you know, they just carry themselves and everything like that. Does that make sense? So, yes. Yeah. Then you have them. Okay.
It's correct.
That's the real problem, right?
But he gives joy. Makes you smile.
Devotees are telling that what it is discussing, that he gives joy to the citizens. That some joyous occasion was there in Qatar or Bahrain, somewhere like that, and the king gave like 50,000 rupees worth of money to every single citizen on that day.
Yeah, but that means you see what are they? You know, these big festivals that they have. How much is there? What's going on? That when at Draupadi's Swayamvar, all the arrangements. Did you hear about that they were selling the stuff there? They had that. They sold tickets, and then they were selling the food, and then especially expensive was the water, right? Like that. Sell fried food, and then for cheap, and then sell the water expensive. Like that. Is that? Huh?
Sounds crazy.
Yeah. No, these are things that are going. They're giving in charity and all this and that, so that's there. But it should be described. He's giving 50,000 to every person, but it should be graded, because to some people 50,000, then they waste it. Like I remember the other day, one devotee, Mataji, was saying that she, was thinking about some money that she was going to, she had, and she was thinking maybe she'd give it to the kids later. But then she thought, well, why not now? They're all big, they have families, so I give now. And so then she gave, I think the son gave the money. It wasn't everything, but it was some, nice little chunk. And then he said, oh, great, I've always wanted to invest in Bitcoin. And then she thought, why did I give him money? Like that. So that was the whole thing, is that you give according to the qualification of the person. So it should be, some people maybe you're only getting 10,000, because if you give more than that, then they'll just go out and buy alcohol and waste their time. And other people's, you might be giving, instead of 50,000, you're giving 500,000. Then that means then it's good. But the point that they're charitable and they're taking care of the citizens, that's good. Then you can improve that by making distinction between the qualifications of the individuals. Does that make sense? But it's always a good thing. So that's the way the kings would go. They do these programs, and so much is, they're feeding everybody, and so much is being given and all that. But you'll see the big charity that they talk about, that's always given to the Brahmins. But how much money does it take to build this whole city for the Kshatriyas to come with their whole retinue to stay? The king comes, he doesn't just come with his PA, right? He comes with his whole family. Then you have everybody else. So I think it was Gayatri Devi, Queen of Jaipur? When she was a child, when their family would travel, I think they would take 2 bogies for themselves. One bogie was just for the family, and the other bogie was for the luggage, which took up half of it, and the other half was for the servants. Like that. So, yeah. So they're not going out with the army. So these kings, they come with their, so you have to put up all that, all their animals, all their everything, all the servants, and they're building all these things. They're like 7-story palaces, but they're temporary. But they're 7-story palaces. Right? And so how much money is that? And the kings, that the seats, I think, were for the, not sure about Swayamvar, but for when the Pandavas, when Duryodhana, Dronacharya, started with the T, right? Finished the training to show the public how nicely they're trained. Then in the arena, then I think for the kings, they were sitting on gold thrones or gold benches, like that. And then, everybody had their own areas, and it would be appropriate for the area. So, like that.
One Jaipur king, when he goes to UK, he takes big silver pot of Ganges water.
Yes. Yeah, he took his own ship. The king of Jaipur, when he had, I can't remember how many he had, but these huge pots, they're like as big as a person, solid silver filled with Ganga water. He was going to England, and his whole point is, what's auspicious over there? So they use that water for the cooking, for their bathing, everything like that. They didn't use the local water. Maybe to, how you say, clean the floors and stuff like that. But no, they would brush their teeth with Ganga water. And so then they took a ship. They didn't just. Yeah, but that's a whole different discussion. But the point is they are pleasing to the public. So then when they come out, so Balaram's very pleasing. So when the Kauravas went inside, Others stayed because they're with Balaram. It's so nice to be with him. And those that are being offensive, then they're the ones that turned their back and, went off in a huff.
When one takes a position in authority, it is necessary that he should take the responsibility of giving protection at all levels to his dependents.
The responsibility of protection means within the context of what they're dealing in. Does that make sense? So it's not just, there's a common point of protection. It's within the area of what they're dealing in.
Because many times when you preach, then when there are many material problems, you have to deal with that at emotional level also. And maybe emotional also.
It means you can deal with that if that's within the context of what you're dealing. But if you're trying to show them, practically and get involved in how they develop their community, then you have to deal with all those things. But if you're showing what's the principles on which it's based and all that they themselves then apply, so you are taking the responsibility that they understand what you're talking about, but they have to apply it, then you don't. Does that make sense? It's just like, what do you call them? The mentors?
Yes.
Yeah, they take that responsibility, but then when it gets up above them, they don't take for they take for the mentors. And above that, then you see Maharaja stuff. He doesn't take responsibility that, this one poked that one and, something like that. He stole my chapati and he took my what do you call it? My kanvi. Kanvi's more important than the chapati. Like that. He doesn't deal with that stuff. That's what the mentors do. So it just depends on your field. So within your field, you take responsibility. Does that make sense? It's like here, we'll discuss philosophy, and so there's a proper understanding of the philosophy that's there. What you eat for breakfast is not our business. Does that make sense? As long as you eat it in the proper consciousness. So, in other words, we're not going to get involved whether you put salt, pepper, and lemon on your and olive oil on your avocado or not.
Good. We shouldn't discuss lunch either.
Yeah, lunch really we're not going to discuss. Okay, Srila Prabhupada writes in Krishna book. For the most part, it was the practice of the Kshatriya kings to inaugurate some kind of fighting between the parties of the bride and groom before the marriage. So this is just how they did. Now, if you don't like that, we can argue over that also. This is just what it is. So therefore, here it's just the, what do you call it? This is how they were dealing. So no one should get too upset that it was a fight. But he did it in a very unique way to win the battle, right? So, the parties of the bridegroom before the marriage. When Samba forcibly took away Laxmana, the elderly members of the Kuru dynasty were pleased to see that he was actually the suitable match for her, right? Because when he fought, it took 6 Maharatis, not 1, 6 to capture him. So then, as far as it goes for a Kshatriya, who especially for Maharatis, because she's Duryodhana's daughter, right? Yes, so then he's a Maharati and a strength of 10,000 elephants. So then he would like, someone very powerful for his daughter. So they're actually very pleased, that it took 6 of them, 6 Maharatis, to catch him. Like this. In order to see his personal strength, however, they fought with him. Right? So when he came and he had what's the word? Just the boldness, the courage, the chivalry. Yeah, that would be the proper word. Huh? Panache, yes. so like that, so chivalry with the flair, right? Then, he comes in and just in front of everyone kidnaps the girl, because many may try, but others would stop them. But no, he actually got the girl and got away. So then they're impressed, but they're not going to say that. That's not how it works. you know, you're impressed by something, then you don't say anything. You just not bad.
Just a side point there. That's good. He can fight so many Maharajas. But how would how come he's married?
I'm not sure who we're quoting from, but somebody on a level that could say this made the point that dealing in the marriage and managing an empire are of, you know, basically similar. So it shows his potential, right? Getting things done, things like that, you know. So that's the. But the point is it's also in all these, it's the qualities that are there, because without the qualities, you can't apply it. See, people may have knowledge and skills that they can apply in Varna, but without character, they can't apply it in ashram. That's the problem. It's the same knowledge and skill and the same way that people deal in their occupation or with their things, with the same understanding. If they applied that to the family interactions, they would do well. They'd do very good. But they don't have the character to. Does that make sense? Because that's what's missing. So people want the knowledge. They want the tricks. They don't want that they have to improve their character to make it work. You know, it's just like saying, okay, here's all the tools that you can use. Oh, great. So then I'll use those. No, you can only use them if you use them from the mode of goodness. You know, then, so that's the difficulty. So the character is there, and that's why they see he's suitably a match for her, because she's very good, proper quality. So he has the same. And then, you know, by fighting, then they can see is, you know, then in the Kshatriya, in the occupational, so they can see from the one side he's good, then they can check from the other. You know, so you know on both sides, Varna and Ashram, he's good.
Right. So in these marriages, I guess the Kshatriya qualities are such that astrology isn't given too much.
Means you can, if that's what they're going to go for. But then in these kind of things where they're doing the Swayambars, the quality of character and commitment to the process and knowing what is the process, and because they're Kshatriyas, it's the same process. That's why mixed marriages are a problem, because one does things in one way, someone does it in another. And so, therefore, if they're committed to the marriage will always work. So it doesn't matter who they marry, because whoever they're marrying is of the same character. So it doesn't matter. Does that make sense? You know, so it's like, let's say I have a basket of apples, and they're of a particular, what do you call them? Variety, yes. And they're of a particular quality. You know, very high quality of a very high, a good variety. So does it matter which apple I take from the basket? No. But if you look at it, each apple is uniquely a little different. So it won't have a problem there. But as the standard thing, then you would check and all that. You know, see that they do in some. If they just want to do like that, then they'll do. But at these kind of things, then it's a little bit more. So it's not that, oh, I'm a Kshatriya, I don't have to. No. The point is they didn't have to, because they had the same training. They all had the same training, same character, same culture. So they would marry from that strata. So that's so the quality of the Yadus and the quality of the Kurus then would match as far as the level of standard of how they would do things, how they would do with the Brahmins, how they do with each other, all these different things. Does that make sense? So therefore will always work, because it's the character that's there. We shouldn't catch the part. You know, Kshatriyas don't appear to be worrying about the astrology, so we don't have to worry because we're Kshatriyas. I'm a manager, so I'm a Kshatriya, so, and they just like the look of the girl, and I like that girl, and so therefore, hey, it's Vedic. Yeah. But the thing is we see in the Mahabharata, just as an example, what do you call it? Yudhishthira Maharaj, when they're out in the forest, this is after they lost the gambling, losing their shirt would be a euphemism here, right? And so then they had to bring bark from the forest to put on, right? So then when she's complaining about the position, how Duryodhana is there and the king and Yudhishthira is not, and how useless this gambling is and that, Yudhishthira deals very gently. Right? Now we would take it, Kshatriyas, we're passionate, we yell, we scream, we throw things, But no, he's very, very gentle. And then with Bhima, then when they're in the Varnavata, then she comes and says, no one's taking care, no one this, no one that. And so Bhima, he could say, what do you mean no one's taking care? I have to sit here and watch pots, and you get to hang out with the queen, at least eat, do something nice. I have to be in the kitchen all. And so he doesn't do that. He just hears what she has to say and very submissively says, don't worry, I'll do this. I'll take care of it. You know what I'm saying? So that's the quality of character. So what princess they couldn't marry? So that's the point. So Kshatriya is a quality of nature, not the external form. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that, okay, we guard the temple at night and we walk around, and so therefore we're Kshatriyas. And, that's not how it works. Does that make sense? Yeah.
There was one question one point that I brought up a few weeks ago, maybe 1 week ago, I don't know, about how these days maybe not everyone that is a certain varna can get a job in that varna, like they might have to settle for something else.
That's another thing. That's what Manu already advises that.
Yeah.
You have your natural form of what you do, and then if you can't do that, then you start, coming down from there.
Yeah, but this is the point that I was trying to make, because what you just said, that it's about the actual nature. So somebody could have, such and such nature, but they have to, in this day and age, because these things aren't valued and they're not supported, then they have to settle for something else. So does that make them, that just because they settled that, even though their nature is?
No, but what are you trying to find out? I don't catch it. What's the point?
If somebody has a Brahminical nature and they have to settle for a Shudra job, does that? I know as devotees by ashram there.
Yeah.
Because is everybody.
But it still doesn't mean that how he deals with the job and how he sees things, he doesn't deal in the proper way. The point is now if he does have the opportunity to do some Brahminical activity, and they don't take it, they prefer to continue as a Shudra, then according to Manu, then they have to reclassify themselves as a Shudra.
Yeah.
They're no longer a Brahmin.
Okay, yeah. If he has the opportunity. Yeah.
If he has the opportunity.
I understand.
Similarly, you explained once that in Dronacharya, when he came to the battlefield, he couldn't have said that don't do Brahma Hatya, don't kill me. At that time, he's taken a Kshatriya and people are allowed to.
Yeah, like that. It's just the way it goes. It means he being there at the battle place, them coming back in the night, or even going out there and then giving direction and talking strategy, then technically they shouldn't be killing him. Yeah. Right? But if he takes up the as the general of the army, then you can kill him. He's acting as a Kshatriya. There'll be consideration, of course, because of his position, but then what about Shalya? He's the uncle. So, so all these things are there. That's why we look at also the Kshatriya whole scene is, has its difficulties. So it's not a spontaneous, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm passionate, I can do what I like. No, it's I'm a Kshatriya, I'm passionate, I follow the rules. That's how it goes.
And about the
And if
Prabhu,
it's no, I do what I like, then we have to, then, as Manu says, you have to reclassify them either as a Shudra at best or a outcast because they don't care for the rules.
about the Prabhu saying that they're not utilizing the instrument of astrology to find matches. When we see the life of Shakuntala, whole life she's raised by Brahmins. But the king, when he saw her, wanted to marry her. So immediately she complained that, no, I'm a Brahman girl. This is Varna Sankar. He said, impossible. The fact that I'm a Kshatriya, I can only be attracted to a Kshatriya girl. So it means that you're a Kshatriya. So they had the sense and all.
But she was a Kshatriya,
Yeah.
but raised by
Brahman.
Okay.
So they had the sense also, not just.
Oh, okay, because the father was a Kshatriya.
Yeah. Vishwamitra's daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, but he was acting like a Brahmin, but
Yeah.
not quite. Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you have that, but that's another age also.
Yeah.
That's not now. It means if from that combination you have a son who can go out and catch tigers. I don't mean like baby cubs, little babies, not like that. Full-size tigers. Tie them up with a rope or what do you call it, a vine or whatever it is, and tie them to a tree, and then play with them like a pet cat. Then go ahead, knock us out, say what you like. Yes, I'm only attracted by Kshatriyas. Yeah, then you can do that. But if not, then one has to stick to it. See, the point is Prabhupada's recommended it, therefore we should do it. Because as it is today, if you take general devotee and says, what's varnashram? Define the 4 varnas and ashrams very clearly so we can, apply it socially. They wouldn't necessarily be able to do it. Therefore, then, by using the charts, you get an understanding. Does that make sense? So that's there, because otherwise, you have 2 people that are from exactly the same social background. They get married and they follow their customs. The marriage will work, but it doesn't mean it won't have its bickering and total differences of opinion, but it'll work as a marriage. You understand? But if you don't have that, you need the charts, because otherwise you don't know. Because we have to the modern context of beauty is only skin deep. That's basically the more that anybody looks. They're not looking at the character, at the personality, at the values, like that. So that's what the chart will tell you. So, but it doesn't mean that just because the chart's good that the marriage will work. It's that you have to put in the effort to make it work. Just because I give you a first-class kitchen and first-class ingredients doesn't mean without first-class endeavor that the cooking will be good. Some think, it's all good, I don't have to make the endeavor. No, you have, by now making the endeavor, you get much more results. So okay.
It's probably a Vedic example.
Huh?
Is it a Vedic example?
Which one?
The kitchen? Does he always say?
Everybody's got to eat. So it's one of the last examples. All my other examples you can't use anymore. Because nowadays it's like, everyone goes on the internet. Their experience of the internet is totally different to someone else. There's no common thing. So even the cooking goes now a little bit, but in some things they wouldn't have a clue. In those groups, then I give the example of, microwave. Put it in there and push the button for 2 minutes. I even remember somebody, they had some system where they had the timer turned off, and so they just put it in and then open the door after some time because they can't get it. They just don't have the patience to set the timer. And I'm not even sure that they kept the door closed with a fork. You got to close the door, put the fork, and then it'll stay. Because I think if you turn off the timer or something, it won't close. Like that, so they just use a fork. So, that's the examples I give in that group. So I think everybody here still has some connection with cooking, at least of eating.
Still here.
Huh?
Still here.
Still here, okay, yes. So that's it. Yeah, because we were giving the defending ones, and then people criticize it's too strong. The reaction's too strong, right? Sleeping probably won't get too far, and mating, people don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, so that only leaves us eating. What to do? By the neti process.
That's what they say. Vedic example.
Yes. In order to see his personal strength, however, they fought with him, and without any respect for the regulations of fighting, they all arrested him. Because it should have been they were happy with his fighting and saw his great prowess, and then invited him back. Instead of arresting him, either invite him back and then send for the Yadus to come for the marriage, or let him go and then he'll go to Dwarka and have the marriage there. So, yeah, because in here is that you have the marriage, but at the same time as you haven't had the marriage. Rakshasa marriage is a marriage, so these Samba and Laxmana are married, but only by the Rakshasa right. So then for humans that's not considered ideal. So then now that that's been done, now they'll have the proper marriage, because there was going to be, and then Rakshasa stepped in, and and then now they go back to the regular marriage. When the Yadu dynasty decided to release Samba from the confinement of the Kurus, Lord Balaram came personally to settle the matter, and as a powerful Kshatriya, he ordered them to free Samba immediately. The Kauravas became superficially insulted by his order, so they challenged Lord Balaram's power. They simply wanted to see him exhibit his inconceivable strength. So then we see here is that it's just a continuation of this. It was the practice of the Kshatriya kings to inaugurate some kind of fighting between the parties of the bride and bridegroom before the marriage. So in some way, so either they actually have a battle or they just insult you, something they do just to create. That's just what they have to do. And so then here Balaram comes, so they dealt with him in this way just to see his prowess. So that's the other side. They didn't. Verses 50 to 54. Lord Balaram returned to Dwarka with a newly married couple. Srila Sukadeva Goswami continued, Duryodhana, being very affectionate to his daughter, gave her as a dowry 1,200 60-year-old elephants. Right, so 60 means that they'll be quite mature in that, because elephants will live to 100, so then, they're good, they're strong. 120,000 horses, 60,000 golden chariots shining like the sun, and 1,000 maidservants with jeweled lockets on their necks. Footnote 19. Duryodhana gave this wealth because of affection for his daughter. He thought, if Balaram and the people here are not pleased, my daughter will not be respected. Right? So then he wants to, make a proper show. The Supreme Lord, chief of the Yadavas, accepted all these gifts, and then departed with his son and daughter-in-law, as well as his well-wishers bid him farewell. Then Lord Halayudha entered his city, Dwarka, and met his relatives, whose hearts were all bound to him in loving attachment. In the assembly hall, he reported to the Yadu leaders everything about his dealings with the Kurus. Srila Jiva Goswami comments, he entered his own city magnificently, Pravistaha, with singing and auspicious music, and met his friends Krishna, Vasudeva, and others. Because of Anurag, they always watched the road for his return. Anurag Tacheta Saha. Among the leaders of the Yadus like Ugrasena, he told them all his actions in the assembly in order to give them joy. Right? So by hearing this, they get joy. That's so that way, another pleasant way, either you could, like we said before, you deal with it, and that pleasant just kind of lightly explain it, or you can say, oh, I get it, you're not a Kshatriya, so you wouldn't understand these things. So that isn't the crazy stuff they do. So, this stuff gives them joy, right, like that. So it doesn't give you joy, it means you're not a Kshatriya or something. However, he told only a little about the Kuru's bad words. He just would mention that they spoke badly and arrogantly and then turned around and refused to give the boy back and, showing their prowess and arrogance. He wouldn't say all the words that they said because why make everybody feel bad? Otherwise, that might start a war itself. Yeah. So that's the whole point. In the name of truth or this or that or things, you don't want to hurt people. You don't need to tell them all the things because it'll make them feel bad. So it's not necessary, right? You don't have to do that. Modern, they'll think, no, but if you don't tell the truth, no, that's not true. If truth means hurting people, then that's not true, right? Does that make sense? Because then when it comes to actual truth, where they would be hurt, means, you have to get serious about Krishna consciousness, that kind of pushing, that we won't do. Oh, no, you don't push this and that. But then when it comes to facts, then they'll tell everything, even though the guy's person, really is destroyed by it. I had to tell them that it's my duty. So that's the thing, is that if we go by pranamoyic ethics, it's always made up. It's always imbalanced. So we see here is then dealing with the theistic morality. Then it has a balance. You have to consider the people that you're working with in application. Does that make sense? That's culture.
Here it seems that no Kuru canto like that.
No?
No Kuru canto.
It appears not.
Even Duryodhana doesn't.
It didn't appear so. Maybe they just wanted to, go back and make sure the city was on that. No, they didn't come. And it appears that it didn't mention about the wedding either. So it didn't say whether the wedding was there or came back to and had the wedding in Dwarka. So that wasn't the important thing. He went to get Samba. And so you know that there's going to be a wedding, so you don't necessarily have to mention it here because the discussion is about Balaram's prowess, right? That was the question, the original question. So that much to bring, because otherwise, you say, did they get married? Of course they got married. But where, and like that. That's not important for this, Does that make sense? Srila Sukadeva Goswami concluded, even today the city of Hastinapur is visibly elevated on its southern side along the Ganges, thus showing the signs of Lord Balaram's prowess. So it's a little higher on that side because he pulled it that way. Because you cut it and then you pull it. So naturally when you first pull it, that side comes up. Srila Prabhupada concludes in Krishna book. It is confirmed from Sukadeva Goswami that in those days, the river flowing through the city of Hastinapur, present-day New Delhi, was known as the Ganges, although today it is called the Jamuna. From authorities like Jiva Goswami, it is confirmed that the Ganges and Jamuna are the same river flowing in different courses. The part of the Ganges which flows through Hastinapur to the area of Vrindavan is called the Jamuna, because it is sanctified by the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. The part of Hastinapur which slopes towards the Jamuna becomes inundated during the rainy season and reminds everyone of Lord Balaram's threatening to cast the city into the Ganges. Conclusion. Material opulence makes a man exactly like an animal. So we see is that because of their opulence and prowess, then they became puffed up. So then Balaram adjusted that. Because a puffed up man no longer wants a peaceful life, but becomes belligerent towards all others. Actually, the members of the Kuru dynasty were very much puffed up due to their opulence, kingdom, aristocracy, family tradition, great warriors, family members, and vast, expansive empire. They did not even observe common formalities of civilized society. In the presence of Lord Balaram, they uttered insulting words about the Yadu dynasty. Hence, it is useless to give such animalistic persons good instructions for gentle behavior and a peaceful life. Thus, the only means to keep animals in order is a stick, punishment. So then if you look at the whole chapter and everything the Acharya said, then we don't see any fault on Balaram's part. He was acting in an appropriate way due to their lack of appropriate behavior. And on all levels, except for when they surrendered, then their behavior was wrong due to arrogance.
And he would not do so. He would not punish them.
Sorry?
if Bhagavan, if he would not punish them by dragging the city into the ranges, then he would not play the role of the original Guru, basically.
They wouldn't?
He wouldn't act as the original Guru if he wouldn't punish them.
He wouldn't be acting as original guru. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's there. But the aspect that's there is that, but at the same time he's doing it through human pastimes. So he's going to do it as a Kshatriya, as a greater family member, and these kind of aspects. But he is the Lord, so therefore he does have to correct. You know what I'm saying? So for the pastime, then it's just a very unique way of dealing. We look at him as the Supreme Lord, then yes, of course that's there. So both of these things have to be there. But the point is, you know, on the pastime level, they wanted to see the prowess of Balaram, so they were reacting badly. Right? So then they knew that he would respond in this way. So they pushed them into this position, but it's still his free will. But as someone who corrects bad behavior, then he took that position.
How can we come to the point of immediately surrendering instead of trying our own plans?
Practice. Because we try our own plans, how many of them are working out, right? So, but it takes a while before we're convinced of that. So the more we try, the sooner we become convinced. But if we don't try or try to say that it's all right or it's not a problem, then it'll just take longer.
Maharaj, about their prayers, surrender of the Kauravas, is it the fake prayers that they don't become devotees? Just like
no,
what is
correct, because they have that understanding of his position, but it doesn't bring them to the point of serious bhakti. It's not that they're not pious enough to understand what the Shastra is talking about. So it just means there are ones there that it is in devotion, but there's ones there that it's not necessarily. Just like Daksha, the Hamsaguya prayers, they're perfectly wonderful, but it's not necessarily that he himself is a devotee. You know, but by the Lord's grace, because of his sincerity in the worship, all that, then his knowledge is there. But then what he does with that knowledge may not be trying to obtain pure bhakti. So that's why it's said this attainment of pure bhakti, that's a rare thing. By Prabhupada's grace, that's the power of the founder Acharya. He makes it look as though it's a very general thing. But you see all the founder Acharyas, that's what they did. The time Madhva, Ramanuja, like that. Then so much is going on, these huge societies of devotees. So one can take it for granted. But the point is it's a rare thing. It's a very rare thing. So many may have, just like it says, it goes through when Lord Chaitanya is instructing, I think it's Sanatana Goswami, going up through that there's unlimited living entities. Of these, very few are human. Of those that are human, very few are civilized, because there's 400,000 varieties, only some of them are civilized. Of those that are civilized, then very few actually endeavor for, this higher understanding. Of those who have, endeavor for it, very few have it. Of those who have it, then out of thousands and thousands of those, very few will actually surrender to the Lord. So you're getting more and more rare as it goes up. So that's the thing, is that you may have so much knowledge about this, but it doesn't necessarily mean you use it for the ultimate goal of bhakti. But it's not that they don't use bhakti in the process. Right? So that's why in some ways you see as the acharyas, certain things then are usable and certain things are not. Because the effort that they put into that area is very valid. It's like the Chanakya, his teachings, they're all very valid, but he's not a devotee. He's just a very solid Brahmin. So therefore, the Brahminical platform is used in Krishna's service, so as a proper Brahmin. So we'll say he's not a devotee, but we'll never say he's not a good Brahmin. Where else do you hear of a prime minister that he lives in a grass hut outside the palace and goes out begging to maintain himself because he doesn't want any debt to the king. Right? He wanted a king so that the kingdom's peaceful, so he could run his gurukul. Right? So that's.
So when Mahaprabhu says that he wants the holy name chanted every time of the year, is that for the purpose of fishing out those few people that will take it up, or giving everybody a gata security to start up next life or whatever?
Yeah, but does it have to be one or the other? It couldn't be both.
Yeah.
So everybody in the village, some will become devotees, so that means they get bhakti, and the other one, everybody else in the village gets a gyata sukriti. Right? Because so these ones became devotees because the amount of gyata sukriti had built up to a certain amount that now they could have that faith. So it's the same process. It's just at one point it matures. It's just like, let's just say, okay, I have a cup and I have a large bowl. And I'm taking the cup, filling it up with water, and pouring it in the bowl. Right? So I do that for some time, and at some point the bowl becomes full. So there's that last cup that the bowl overflows. Right? So, but the process for it overflowing and the process for filling it up to overflowing is the same.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just trying to see, like, the general mood of preachers in ISKCON, or leaders, or whatever you want to call them, that it's like they're seeing, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
So chapter 69. Narad Muni visits Lord Krishna's palaces in Dwarka. Pratigya. One can understand the inconceivable action of the Lord's internal potency only by his mercy. Chapter 69 summarizes questions and answers. Lord Krishna asked Narad Muni questions 1038 of Srimad Bhagavatam from 1069-16. After fully worshipping the great sage of the demigods, according to the Vedic injunctions, Lord Krishna, who is himself the original sage, Narayana, the friend of Nara, conversed with Narada, and the Lord's measured speech was sweet as nectar. Right? Measured speech means you speak properly. Every word is proper, appropriate, proper tone, proper everything. Finally, the Lord asked Narada, "What may we do for you, our Lord and Master?" It's like somebody has like those baby shoes, Narad Muni answers the question in verse 18. The rhetorical question uttered in verse 21 does not come under the study. Adhyaya Prakashika. This chapter relates how Narad Muni was amazed to see the household pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna and how he offered prayers to the Lord. After killing the demon Naraka, Lord Krishna had simultaneously married 16,000 maidens, and sage Narada wanted to observe the Lord's diverse activities in this unique family situation. Right? We have to agree it's unique. Thus he went to Dwarka. Narada entered one of the 16,000 palaces and saw goddess Rukmini personally rendering menial service to Sri Krishna, despite her being in the company of thousands of maidservants. Right? Because whatever she does, then the maidservants are always there to help. But she does these services directly. It's just the culture. Just like I remember being in one in Calcutta, at the time, very wealthy man, but at the same time, as he wasn't just businessman wealthy, they were business families that have been in Calcutta for many generations. So they took on that kind of Bengali cultured mood, even though they weren't Bengalis. So he's also very, sophisticated and a very socially, he can move around in any circle. And he was very good in it. Depending on what he was doing, he would address for that. So when he came to the temple, always in dhoti and kurta and like this and that, but then he's out somewhere, he's dressed, every place he's dressed differently. very aristocratic. And so they heard about Prabhupada's, I think, bhakti chachar, the portal and potato sabji where it gets burnt. And they were very intrigued because they were, being refined and sophisticated. They were into fine cooking like that. And so then they asked us to come and show them. So we came to their kitchen, and they're there, and the servants are there, and they just cooked how much they eat, and being cultured and general, like that, they didn't eat very much. So I mean, the amount of bhakti chachari I cooked would have been about an amount for half a Gurukul boy, but that was for whoever was going to eat. Because everyone just tastes, nice, because the other preparations. And so then, in the discussion, I noticed she was cooking. Because the other things, I was just doing bhakti chachari, and she was doing everything else. And so then I asked her about the cooking and the servants and, all this and that. And she said they prepare things. They'll cut things, prepare things, like that, clean the kitchen and wash the pots and all, but they'll never cook. Because they're the head of the family. Why they should cook? Otherwise, you're eating their cooking, and then you take on their consciousness, like that. So it's just just you see this, or like I said, I made another house I saw in Delhi, where the servants of the house were going through and cleaning the house, and I noticed the lady of the house was also cleaning, and I asked her, "Why are you cleaning?" "They're cleaning." She said they only clean the floor. Anything on the ground they clean. Anything above the ground she cleans. Because they'll never put everything right. When they clean the table, they'll never put it back the way you want it. The pillow's upside down, the thing's in the wrong place, it's not symmetric. So just that. And two is that if they can only touch things on the floor, they can't steal. Because things we're stealing aren't on the floor. So that's just the way it works. Because they don't have a right to touch something up there. So this is just the whole thing, is that here we see this comes originally from, the goddess of fortune. She has thousands of maidservants, but she does the service herself because it's for Krishna. Just like it means there may be pujaris and that, for the temple and all that, but the worship itself is done by the person of the house. It's his temple. He'll do the worship. Like Ambarish Maharaj, he's there. The others may prepare paraphernalia and do other things like that and help with things and like that, but he'll do the worship. That's just that's the culture standard. Is that? Yes, it's still like that. But I'm saying that cultured families is the way it works. And then, people who aren't as cultured and they get enough money and they have servants, then they always have them cook and do everything. I say, let everyone connect the dots. Yes. Okay. As soon as Lord Krishna noticed Narada, he got up from his bed, offered obeisances to the sage, and seated him on his own seat. Right? Not just another seat, but his seat. Then the Lord bathed Narada's feet and sprinkled the water on his own head. Such is the exemplary behavior of the Lord. Right? So he's doing like this. So Narad Muni didn't just come in and plunk himself down somewhere. Because one of the things that Manu mentions is about, people have their seats. You have to be aware of their seats. So that's always the thing, is when you come into the living room and someone's there, you see, where do they ask you to sit? Sit there rather than just go and sit. Otherwise, you may end up sitting in their seat, and then they're not very pleased. Does that make sense? But here, then, he got up and gave him his own seat. So then that's fine. Because he's arranged like that. So you sit where they want you to sit. So that's why it says such was the exemplary behavior of the Lord. He got up and immediately, what we see is that Indra, then Brihaspati walks into the court, and how do you say? He doesn't stand up, and then everything falls apart. Like that. And he's not superior to Brihaspati. Brihaspati actually is superior to him. One, as a Brahmin, and two, just what planetary system he's from. He's in the planetary systems higher than Indra. While Krishna, he's the original personality of Godhead, and Narad Muni is his devotee. But because he's playing the role of a Kshatriya, He therefore respects the Brahman. Therefore, that's the exemplary behavior. After conversing with the Lord for a short while, Narada went to another of his palaces, where he saw Sri Krishna playing at dice with his queen and Uddhava. Going from there to another palace, he found Lord Krishna coddling his infant children. In another palace, he saw him preparing to take a bath. In another, performing fire sacrifices. In another, feeding Brahmins. And in another, eating the remnants left by Brahmins. In one palace, the Lord was performing noontime rituals. In another, quietly chanting the Gayatri mantra. In another, sleeping on his bed. In another, consulting with his ministers. And in yet another, playing in the water with his female companions. Somewhere the Lord was giving charity to Brahmins. In another palace, he was joking and laughing with his consort. In yet another palace, he was meditating on the Supersoul. Somewhere he was serving his spiritual masters. In another place, he was arranging for the marriages of his sons and daughters. Elsewhere, he was going out to hunt animals. And elsewhere, he was moving about in disguise to find out what the citizens were thinking. Having seen all this, Narada addressed Lord Krishna. Only because I have served your lotus feet can I understand these varieties of your yoga maya potency, which ordinary living beings bewildered by illusion cannot begin to perceive. Thus I am most fortunate, and I simply desire to travel all over the three worlds, chanting the glories of your pastimes, which purify all the worlds. Sri Krishna asked Narada not to be confused by his vision of the Lord's transcendental opulences, and he described to him the purposes of his appearances in this world. He then honored the sage properly according to religious principles, and Narada departed, continuously meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Narada is able to witness entire day's activities of Krishna.
Yes, that's what he says. Only because I have served your lotus feet can I understand these varieties of your yoga maya potency, which ordinary living beings bewildered by illusion cannot begin to perceive. Thus I am most fortunate. Right? So the Lord arranges this. He has this desire in the Lord then around us. Because otherwise, to go, door to door and be received and all that, how many can he go to in a day? Right? 8, 10 houses like that, and then he's got 16,000 90 to go, like that. And so 7 years later, then Narada Muni came to him. This is really amazing. And besides that, I gained 50 kilos from all the food you fed. So he's just able to at one time see all of them. He goes to the one palace, and then he's able to go and see all of them. So we'll hear the details of that as it becomes revealed, as we hear about it, and that rendering of service then allows us to gain the mercy of the Lord so that it may be revealed. Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samba Bhaktividya ki, Jainatai Gaura.